And for more context, we are joined again by Bruce Linton, the former co-CEO of Canopy Growth and the executive chairman of Vireo Health. So you saw what some of those retailers were saying. You could see their frustration. What's your reaction?
Well, I kind of get it, right? They're at a point of sale where they want to make a profit. But it's a bit like Barclays, you know, the bank. They have a back-to-school essentials show in Boston every year, and it's a big consumer store. And 2 or 3 years ago, I was invited because apparently cannabis is now a back-to-school consumer product good essential, which was a bit of new news to me. And so when I hear about these products, it's like the only possible way you could have had it is on the 17th if everything went perfectly, and most of the distribution involves unionized warehouses and stuff. So the reality is this was designed to hit in 2020, and it's probably going to mean that you have to hang out with relatives at Christmas and don't have any support from THC chocolate, but get over it. There's going to be next year.
But interesting that it's the cannabis retailers themselves that are saying this. We're not talking about the average consumer, which means there must be some kind of communication gap here.
Yeah, I think the retailers really want to make as much money as they can, and they should. But everybody who follows the regulations knows that something passed on October 17th has a 60-day implementation review window, which means the earliest possible day anybody could ship that product is the 17th or 18th of December, which gets pretty close to Christmas and warehouses shutting down. So, you know, it's a pretty tight window.
Now, for any of the producers themselves, as they get ready for those products to eventually be on store shelves, you have to make a lot of choices about where you're going to invest money. Obviously, spending money to grow the business was something that we saw during your time at Canopy. I mean, looking back, because earlier you were talking about this now laser focus on profits, do you feel any responsibility for setting Canopy up here in a position for these substantial quarterly losses and burning through cash, which obviously the sector is feeling that pressure?
Yeah, we spent a lot of money building things. And so when you have a Tweed and Tonic or Deep Space or some of these products, they're all being made in a factory that the construction was commenced before the regulations even said we could make beverages. But if you know that that's the case, and there's chocolate now, Hummingbird Chocolate is incorporating this stuff. That chocolate creation capacity was funded way before the rules said you could have it, because you have to get it ready so that you can ship it the first day of January. And so I think a lot of these things now will roll out and the products will be there because we spent a lot of money to have the infrastructure. People spending it today will be a year and a half later, and if a good product hits the market, you buy it 5 times. You might try something else the 6th, but you've already established what you prefer, and you'll probably come back. So I think durable market share may be held by companies like Canopy because they actually have first and best, and it becomes a standard.
You've jumped into something else that has played into this stock market sell-off for cannabis this year, which is that you've got to start building something and get ready for the rollout, and you've also got to be mindful of the regulators themselves. We spent a lot of time on this network talking about what happened at CanTrust, and while we don't know everything that has happened behind the scenes with Health Canada in their inspections, clearly there were cases in this country where there was production at facilities prior to the licenses being in place.
Yeah, inexcusable, right? If you deal with Health Canada as a senior person in the company, it's extraordinarily obvious which areas are licensed because they'll send you on Friday at close of markets, this is now licensed. So somehow that mess will get cleaned up. But I'm more interested now what's happening across the U.S. and Europe, because across the U.S. it's very uneven, and I think the U.S. stocks could
like that issue, the regulation of when you can start producing?
What you can do, how you track it is state to state. And so I really think what's going to happen in the U.S. in 2020, each party is going to make a very clear statement on how they will govern cannabis. And it polls really well. Like, Americans are generally comfortable with medical cannabis and prefer regulation of rec. And so I think Mr. Trump's going to say, I'm going to do states' rights, meaning that if the state is having medical only or medical in a party, that is okay for that state. You can't leave the state with it. And so I think you're going to see companies that are in the states that are public, upon that announcement, could double, triple, or quadruple, because it really means that they could probably go on a stock exchange. They could actually do other things in the U.S.
We only got about 30 seconds left, but looking to 2020, do you think there's any possibility, a big election year, do you think there's any possibility that President Trump might address that issue of making cannabis legal at a federal level?
Yeah, I think he will, and I think both parties will, but I don't think they're going to make it federally legal. What they're going to say is the federal rules will be in compliance with each state does. So Colorado, for example, has medical and rec. It would be federally permissible to do that, meaning that if you operated in Colorado, perhaps then you could list on, say, NASDAQ. And so that will be a huge difference, because then they'll be listed in Canada and the U.S. And I think Trump and the Democrats are each going to take a position fairly similar on whatever a state says goes.
All right. We will be watching, Bruce, to get your perspective. Get the holiday jacket.
The holiday jacket once a year, man.
Good, yeah. Bruce Linton joining us. He's the executive chairman of Vireo Health, giving us his perspective on the outlook for the cannabis sector.